I'm going to cover the steps on how to tape and compound a seam. And what's nice about doing drywall is you can see here we didn't make a perfect cut, and drywall is a very forgiving material. So even if you start with a seam like this, we're going to end up with a very professional look. And what we're going to do first is embed this paper tape in a bead of compound. And one mistake most people make is they either put too much compound underneath the tape or they don't cover it with 3 thin coats and feather it out. So for the first step, we're just going to apply a bead of compound all the way down the seam, and I'm going to start from the top and work my way down. I'm using 2 knives because it's easy just to scrape it off each other. And we want to start with a 6-inch blade, and then we're slowly going to go to either a 10-inch or a 12-inch blade. So you want to make sure that you have at least, you don't want it to be right down to the drywall or it won't stick. You need about 1/8 of an inch underneath the tape. And so you start from the top and work your way down, and then from the bottom and work your way up so that you don't have a pile of compound at the end. And we're just going to embed the tape right in the center. And then we can either hold it and give it gentle pressure, or you can come off to the side and pull it, depending on how high on a wall you're working. But you want to just now give it light pressure, and you want to pull off excess compound underneath there. You want to have about a 1/16 of an inch underneath once you apply pressure. And here you can see it looks like there's a little bit of compound that's not holding it. You can just slide under and slide some compound underneath it and then press it into it. And then on the bottom we're just going to use the blade and actually come at an angle so that we can press it into the compound. And now we want to pull off all the excess. So we want to make sure that compound tape is smooth, there's no wrinkles, and if you have to come a couple different directions, that's fine. I'm using all-purpose compound, so it takes 6 to 8 hours to fully dry, so it gives you plenty of time to work this. And you want to come up the edge, you want to get any of these knife marks out and any excess compound. So make a few passes, get all the excess off. And now what we're going to do is just put one very, very thin coat of compound over the tape, and I'm going to work halfway down, then I'm going to start from the bottom and I'm going to work up, just applying a very thin coat. And you can make multiple passes until you get these knife marks out. Now there's a little bit of a height difference here, so we can apply a little extra compound and float it into that area and just make that wave disappear. So make a couple passes, pull off all the excess so we won't have any extra sanding, and we're going to let this dry for 24 hours and then we'll apply our second coat. The first coat is dry, and we're just going to take a compound knife, and because we use such a thin coat, there's no reason to sand. We'll just scrape off any imperfections or any little knife mark. And now we're going to use a 10-inch blade, and we're going to start from the top. And we're going to put a smooth coat on. I'm going to pull it about halfway down, then using the second knife so I can put the compound right on the edge of the blade. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. And so we'll just make a few passes until we get it nice and smooth, eliminating any knife marks. And that looks pretty good. And we'll just let this dry overnight. And because we're using all-purpose compound, it takes quite a few hours to dry, so we'll let it dry and we'll put on a third coat. The second coat's dry and it looks good, and we'll just take a blade and knock down any little knife marks or any little particles on this. Now on the third coat, because we're butting together 2 pieces of drywall that don't have tapered seams, this tape is going to be just slightly higher than the drywall itself. So on this third coat, you want to use a 10 or a 12-inch blade, and you want to put a heavy pressure on the outside of the blade and a little lighter pressure towards the center, and we're going to try to taper this up and over the seam all the way across, and that's what's going to make the seam invisible. So we'll just use our second knife, put a little compound on this, and we're going to start from one side of the seam, and we'll just keep applying this. And again, I'm putting heavy pressure here so this feathers up and over that seam. So I'll start from the top and work my way down. And then I'll start from the bottom and work up. And we'll do this on both sides. And again, this all-purpose compound gives us plenty of time, drying time to work. So now we're just going to make multiple passes till we smooth out all of these knife marks. And I'm going to put heavy pressure on this outside edge and a little lighter pressure on the inside. And we'll make those knife marks go away. And then the same on the other side. And then just make multiple passes until it looks good. And if it grabs a little bit and pulls, you don't have enough compound on there, you can just work it and put a little more compound. So we'll let this dry, and then as soon as this is dry, we can take a look. If there's any imperfections, then we can go at those little imperfections and smooth it. So we'll let this dry overnight, and we'll see how it looks. So the third coat's dry, and it looks great. And now all we have to do is sand it, and any areas where there's a little bit of a high spot, you can just feather it smooth. And if you have any areas where there's a little hole or a divot, you can just grab a little bit of compound and touch it up, so you don't have to be scared to go back. Touch it up, let it dry, and then sand it. And then once you're done sanding, you just prime and paint. So it's pretty easy to get a nice finish. The only thing you want to be careful of when you're sanding is to be very careful right over the tape, because you don't want to go through and hit the tape because that'll pull it up. But a thin coat under the compound and 3 top coats, and you'll get a fantastic finish.